is Araf with Restaurant Systems Pro. I am coming to you today because I wanted to explain how to set up a shelf-to-sheet for your inventory for your line. It's not as straightforward as, say, dry storage or even the walk-in. So, without further ado, when you're setting up your shelf-to-sheet, what you want to remember is always keep it in order, right? Like you're reading a book. So, you would start here in the corner, and you would go across like you're reading a page in a book, okay? Then you'd go over to the next section and do the same thing. So you'll set it up. Now, the trick with the line is you want to set it up by the pan more often than not, with the possible exception of expensive meats and expensive cheeses, right? Those you'll probably want to weigh no matter where you store them. But for the rest of this stuff, there's no reason to have to pull all of these pans out every inventory and weigh them, right? Not if you could just count it by the full pan. So I'll give you an example. This cheese, this is in a deep 6 pan, which is about 2.7 quarts. Now that's important because when you're doing this, when you're setting this up, you're also setting yourself up to make your recipes easier, okay? Most people are not going to weigh out the cheese every time that they use it. They will more likely use a cup, such as one of these 3.25 ounce cups, right? It would be, if they are properly portioning their cheese, right? They're going to use a volume measurement, which is the case for most of this stuff. So you're not only making it easier to count doing it this way, you are also going to allow for easier time making recipes. So, let me show you how to do this. When you're going to do this, you're going to, as you write it down, you're going to write down the size of the pan. I just, like we just talked about, this is a deep 6 pan. This one is a shallow 6, right? And you would just go down the line and you would write all of these things down. I have a deep 6 of jalapenos, a deep 6 of sliced olives, and so on. Then what you want to do so that you can create actual recipes out of these is you're going to want to weigh it. Weigh the items if you buy them by the weight. For example, I'm going to find out how much cheese is in this container so that when I count it, that part of it is already done. Okay, so here's what you'll do. Pull out your trusty scale. Don't forget to tare it. Okay, so I have my empty pan here. And sometimes it works. There we go. Okay, so now it's ready. So now it will not include the pan weight. So I can just weigh what's in it. And I set it on there. So it's about 1 pound, almost 1 pound, 12 ounces. Okay? You would write that down and move on to the next item. Now again, the reason you're doing this is to set it up so that you're just counting the pan at inventory time. When it comes, if you were to count this pan right now, this would be full. This would be considered full. So your count on this pan would be 1, and you would not have to weigh anything. Okay, that's what you're doing. Same with your chopped tomatoes and your chopped onions. Also items that would probably get something like this, you know, when they're putting it on certain dishes. Things like avocados, you can probably count by the each, by the individual, okay, because that's how they're stored, and which is perfectly fine. The sliced cheese, you can do a couple of different ways. Some people like to take a certain number of slices and wrap them. You can create a recipe that says sliced cheddar by pack, and it would be 13 slices, however many you would want to put in a pack. In this case, they don't really do that. So what I would do with these cheeses is I would weigh them because cheese is expensive. Okay, so that would be the one item on this line right now that I would actually weigh. On down the line, you have other things to work with too. So we have tomatoes, sliced tomatoes. What we're trying to do is, remember, count the pan, but also be able to use this in a recipe. So what I did was I figured out how many slices are in this pan. Now, I'm going to tare it. Okay, it's a little over a pound. It's about 1 pound and 3 ounces. Okay, so because you buy tomatoes, by the pound usually, or it comes like in a 20-pound box or something, you buy it by the weight, you would have to figure out what the weight is, figure out the number of slices in here, because now I'm going to build a recipe that says regular 6-pan of sliced tomatoes, and I know that there are 25 slices that fit in here. I know this because I counted them. Okay? You only have to do it once, but now what that enables you to do is not only quickly do your inventory, but also now you can use tomato by the slice in your recipes, and you don't have to guess about how much it weighs. Okay? All of this is a prep to make sure that you can easily do your recipes. Here's another item because you buy it differently. Okay? That's romaine lettuce. These are obviously they've been cut to have usable leaves for sandwiches or burgers. Okay? What you need to figure out, because generally speaking, you buy your romaine by the head, or in a case of 24 usually. Okay? So what they did was they figured out how many usable leaves they get for sandwiches. So in this case, it's it's about 12 usable leaves, and it only took up about half a head, maybe a little over half a head. Okay, so now we can create the deep 6-pan of lettuce leaves, and we can break it down to the individual leaf, thereby being able to use it in a recipe and count it quickly in inventory. So I know this is riveting, so stick with me. A lot of times things are stored, 8-ounce, pint, quart-sized containers, right? These are good, especially if you have a smaller kitchen and with less room, right? You prep stuff and you put them in these. The same concept applies, right? We know, because we asked, that because these are green onions, because you buy those in bunches, not by the weight, so we're not going to weigh it. We figured out that this is one bunch fits into this container, so now we can set that one up as well. A couple of more things to consider. We have things like burger patties, right? They make their own burger patties here. They're gracious enough to let us use their kitchen today. And I know that these are 7-ounce burgers because I weigh them, and that there are 12 that fit in here. So you could inventory burgers one of two ways. Number one, you could weigh them, or you can just know that there are 12 that fit in there, and if you're missing a couple, you can do the math. So there are two ways to do that. Same goes for any of your pre-portioned meat. This is corned beef, right? Kind of a high commodity. By the time it's brined and cooked, it's a very expensive product. So this has to be portioned, okay, in order for them to keep track. These portions are, what are they, Frank? 3 ounces? What's the portion size? 4.5. 4.5 ounces. Thank you. 4.5 ounces per portion. Now this, I would probably count the portions because it is so expensive. Okay, you're going to find that if you have steaks that you're cutting and things like that, you're going to probably want to weigh them, or at the very least count the portions, just to make sure it's accurate, because these are your higher cost items. The last thing I want to cover, hopefully you're getting an idea. Last thing I want to cover is, we use a lot of these, right? I would recommend that you make it consistent across the board. Don't say, today I'm going to use the 24-ounce squeeze bottle of Caesar, but tomorrow if I don't have a 24-ounce available, I'll put it in a 12. It's my advice. It makes life a lot easier for everyone if you are consistent with the size bottles that you're using. And some may not even need to be this big because you don't use as much of it. This one in particular, though, this is Caesar dressing, and they probably use it quite a bit. So it's just going to be a matter of gauging that, how much you're using. But hopefully this gives you an idea of how to set these things up and then utilize them in recipes. So we wanted to show you the next step in setting up your line inventory. You've seen already how to look at it and gauge what size pans everything is in. You weigh the pans where needed. You figure out how many slices or leaves or whatever the particular product is in each of those pans. The next step then, once you get all of that written down, is going to be to create those batch recipes, because that's exactly what they are. They're going to be conversion recipes. So if I go into food systems and recipe costing cards, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new batch recipe using my plus sign. One of the things that we covered was romaine by the leaf, right? Because we determined that one deep 6 pan holds approximately 13 usable leaves. So my recipe, the way I would set it up, would be romaine by leaf. Right? Of course, the category is food. Okay, now we're going to add this. Now, Frank, the chef at the restaurant, told me that what he did was he used about a half of a head of romaine per 6 pan. So my first ingredient is going to be romaine, and they do get their romaine by the head or by the case of 24 heads a piece. So we're going to use the usage unit because that's in quantities of 1 head. I only need a half for this recipe, so I'm going to do 0.5. My quantity note then would be 1/2 head. Okay, and that's really all you need out of that. Down here, this is where the conversion happens. So always think of the batch as, what does this recipe yield? Well, in this case, a half a head of romaine yields 13 usable leaves on average. So I'm going to say my quantity is 13, my unit is each. Okay, storage unit, I would be more descriptive. I would say 6 pan equals 13 leaves. This will help for whomever is going to be counting it in inventory. So again, though, my quantity is the same, 13 each. Portion, how am I going to use this in other recipes? Well, by the leaf, right? That's the whole point. So it's going to be 1 each. When I hit calculate and save, what happens is that the system says, okay, this is the breakdown. 1 6 pan is worth $1.14, and 1 leaf then is worth 9 cents. But now I have the ability to not only count it in inventory, but also use it in a recipe. If I go to view location, I can put this on the cook's line to be counted by the 6th pan. Okay, we're going to do a couple more of these because there are different types. One of the other ones we did was shredded cheese. This is huge because cheese is expensive, and so ideally it is being portioned, although I will tell you that I almost never encounter people who portion it, but that is ideal, and this is what we teach. So we're going to call this cheddar by volume. Actually, we're going to call it cheddar shredded by volume. And then, of course, the category is food. Okay, usually these come in bags that are around 5 pounds. So we're going to convert it. So I'm going to add my ingredient here. Okay, and I know that this is a grouped item for them. So here it is, cheddar cheese shredded. Okay, and we weighed it when we weighed it in the restaurant, so it was about 28 ounces, right? So my quantity note then is 28 ounces. Okay, now let's do the conversion. This is a deep 6 pan, which is about 2.7 quarts. I'm going to do the same thing for the storage unit. I know it seems antithetical to do it this way with a dry good being in quarts, but bear with me and it will hopefully come around. So then my portion is going to be, right, I'm going to opt for the smallest unit of measure to use in other recipes. Okay, so now what this does is this gives me the ability to just count it by the 6 pan without having to weigh it every time, right? I can just look at it and say, oh, it's full, so that's a count of 1. It's half full, so that's a count of 0.5, rather than taking the time to weigh it, because you know what? We've already done that. And this price, this amount, this dollar amount will be updated every single time an invoice and a purchase order are entered. Okay, so you will always have the most current amounts. Okay, this is a great big time-saving item to do, and it also helps in your recipes. So, for example, if you serve nachos, 9 times out of 10, whoever's making the nachos, that person is going to use his or her hand to spread the cheese on. However, I would caution you against that, because cheese is expensive and because you want it to look the same every time. I would very much tell you that you should pick, the container or the portion cup that is most indicative of how much you want to have on your recipe. For example, a big plate of nachos would probably require at least 1 full measuring cup of cheese. It might even require more. You could use this portion here and just do 8 fluid ounces, because that is what a measuring cup comes out to. Okay, so what this does is this is setting you up to create those item recipes. Okay, and again, you would put it into your inventory so that it can now be counted as well. We're going to do another one. We're going to do tomatoes by the slice. Category would again be food. Make it active and save it. Okay, so now we're going to add our ingredients. So it's the 5x6s. And basically we're going to use the usage unit because it's 1 tomato. So they get about, on average, 5 slices per tomato, 5 usable slices per tomato. So in order to create our 6 pan of tomatoes slices, which was not a deep 6, right? It was a regular size 6 pan. Then we're going to be using 5 tomatoes. So we'll say 5 tomatoes sliced. Okay. Now let's convert it. So we know that a regular 6 pan equals about 25 slices. The quantity is 25, unit is each. I'm going to do the same thing for storage. And then my portion again would be 1 slice. Now we can use it like we do the lettuce leaves in recipes. Okay, we're going to do one more because inevitably you are going to have squeeze bottles probably on your lines. At least to some degree you will. So we're going to call this Caesar dressing because that was the one we looked at. And we'll say squeeze bottle. Okay, I like to be descriptive in my recipe names. It makes them easier to find and easier to understand, frankly, when you're looking at it in an inventory. So I'm going to add Caesar dressing. Okay, and my usage unit, of course, by the fluid ounce, and these were about 28 fluid ounce bottles, so we're going to say there were 28 fluid ounces. All right, and down here, we say 28 ounce bottle, 28. Don't forget these are fluid ounces, right? Not weighted. Same for storage. And then your portion again would be 1 fluid ounce. Let's go with the smallest so that you can then create your recipes. Okay, you will find that there will be other variations for your line that you will need to work with. I would encourage you to contact us, either schedule a time with one of our coaches to help walk you through, any items that you're uncertain about, or use the chat function down here, or you can always, call into tech support as well if you have questions. But please don't hesitate to reach out.